I heard you say one time, Jacob, that, everybody does it different. Like everybody finds how they hunt. And if you were just to say, what is the one thing that's made you successful? I think what I learned was timing. I mean, I used to start hunting hard on the first day of season. And I mean, by the time we got to the rut, I'd kind of used up a lot of the time that I could be away from my family, could be away from work. And then I finally was like, shoot, 2 days at the right time is better than 10 at the wrong time.
Clay Newcomb, I'm happy to be here.
I'm happy you're here. The global headquarters, man.
The global headquarters. Yeah, I know. I'm pretty happy to be sitting in this room. I've been watching you forever, man.
Yeah?
Yeah, seriously. I've been following you for a long time. And this is going to be a fun conversation. Jacob, how are you?
I'm doing well. Anytime I can get back to Arkansas, I always feel like I'm doing better.
You went to high school here.
Yeah, I love Arkansas, man.
It's a good state.
Yeah, it's like, y'all... There are certain times of the year I will root for Razorbacks. I'm an Alabama fan.
Really?
But yeah, I like to see them do good because the problem is I have so many Arkansas friends up here. If the Razorbacks are not doing great, I hear from it. And it's bad. It's depressing. So, I want them to do good.
You've probably been hearing a lot of that lately.
But, no, we're super excited to be here, Clay. And there's a lot we want to cover with you. But one thing that I'm super interested in discussing with you, me and Andrew both, is your upbringing in the outdoors and how you got introduced to it. And really, your upbringing as a young kid into your adolescent years and how you had so much focus in the outdoors, spending time in hunting. Yeah. So what was it like growing up here in Arkansas?
My dad's one of my all-time heroes. His picture's right up here. But, I think it was just like so many other, people that grew up in hunting families. There was never really a choice. It's just like we just hunted. That's just what we did. And his life was unique in that he was a banker. So, you might look at me and think, oh, I bet Clay's dad was a rancher, he was a banker. But that uniquely funneled his energy towards the outdoors to when he got home and when I was with him. So he wore a suit and tie to work every day. And we grew up in a small town in rural Arkansas. And so, my family's been in Arkansas for 7 generations. My kids are 8th generation Arkansans. And so, but when Dad came home, he wouldn't tell me stories about insurance agents and dentists. He told me stories about hunters and about, I vividly remember as a kid, I don't know why it sticks out, but he told me a story about this family that would come in, sit down with him to formally borrow $400 so they could go catfishing for 2 weeks. And it's like a loan, like buying a house. These people would come in every year. Those are the stories he told me about. He'd come home and he'd say, Clay, get in the truck. We're going to drive out to Posey Hollow and we're going to talk to this guy. He killed a big deer. And we drive out to some mobile home in the back of nowhere, a guy with 25 walker dogs tied up to dog boxes and can't hear because all the dogs barking. Guy pulls out a big old buck out of a freezer. And, my dad talked about and treated those people like they were royalty. Like those are the people that he was interested in. And so I always say that my dad was kind of an anthropologist in a way to me because these were our people, but in a way, he just talked about them like they were, like these real mountain people, which I consider myself one of them, but he glamorized them and he loved them. And that's been my fascination with hunting, with rural America, with people has been kind of started from him, and so his story in hunting was unique because, he was born in 1948, the 50s, 60s, there weren't deer around here. I mean, this was like the low times of deer in this part of the world. There were guys that deer hunted. People were killing deer, but massively less than what there are now, significantly less. And so his dad was a quail hunter and is a hardcore, a bird dog trainer and bird dog man as there could have been. I mean, Clay Newcomb was a bird dog man. And so there was that hunting connection to the land there. And so Dad grew up bird hunting. Well, in the 1970s, deer populations started to come up. People started making compound bows. Fred Bear, PSE, all these bow companies started popping up. And so he started bow hunting. And that deer, there's a picture in my office right here of him with a buck that he killed, the first deer that he ever killed. And when he killed that deer, to hear him talk about it, to this day, he's like giddy about and what it made him feel killing that first deer. And he was the only guy in his town that had killed a deer with a bow. I mean, it was like he was, he was the best hunter that ever lived, killing deer with a bow. And so that became his thing, was bow hunting deer. So growing up, like, we didn't have a deer rifle in our house. Like, I was not permitted to shoot a deer with a rifle. And if we're going to kill a deer, we're going to kill it with a bow. And he was militant with his weekends during deer season. And so it's like, when I was with him, it was just like dead serious. And I would say this, my dad was here. We weren't there to have fun. We were there to kill a deer with a bow on public land. And it was so, I kind of got somehow the right mix of that fatherly instruction, because I've got two brothers that don't hunt, that got burned out on it because of how intense my dad was. Because he worked all week. He had 2 days and really 1 day to kill a deer, because we went to church on Sunday. We had to be there morning and evening, and he would hunt sometimes Sunday morning before church. And his goal was to kill 1 deer on public land with a bow. And man, he did that as well as anybody ever could have for Arkansas. And that's the cool thing about hunting, is that today, like, if you looked at like the resume of my dad, you'd be like, well, he didn't ever kill any big deer. Killing a doe on public land every year for 50 years, not that big a deal. Man, it was a massive deal. I mean, for him, he lived, and he's still alive. I mean, my dad's still alive. But he taught me how to treasure and value and steward what you have. And I mean, he lived a life of adventure equivalent to Jim Shockey, for his little world. And so, as I've had more opportunity to go and do more things, I cannot ever get over just local hunting. And to me, to go out here and kill a deer with a bow is like top shelf.
Dude, I think that's one reason that I've been watching you for so many years, and I've always just really admired you. And one of the reasons is that right there. Because you said in maybe an interview or something one time, you said basically what you just said. You're like, I have a strong sense of place, and I'm very proud of where I'm from. And I feel the same way about Alabama. And I've always, again, we were talking on Bear Grease when we were on Bear Grease with you about why we started the show. And part of why we started this show is it just didn't exist out there. And a lot of the hunting industry is centered around the Midwest,
Right.
just because it's the land of milk and honey.
It's the flashy whitetail hunting.
Yeah, but I just love hunting in Alabama, man. I just love hunting big woods. I like hunting pines. I just like where I'm from. And you were one of the only people that I ever saw kind of take that same mindset. And I eat it up. Because I think that the local hunting, man, like there's so much adventure in your backyard, and there's so much history and culture. I mean, like what you're saying about all these good hunters around you, you just kind of idolize them. I'm the same way in Alabama.
Yep.
I mean, it's just, there's something to that, and people, I think, are really missing out if they don't kind of stop and appreciate that for a minute.
Man, I have way more respect for somebody like a Mo Shepherd, who you guys interviewed.
Oh, yeah.
Local guy hunting rough public land, never really hunted very many other places. Shoot, man, he's twice the hunter I am. Like, but people might know my name because of the opportunity that I've had. And I mean, there's this idea that like people that go far and do wild stuff, like outside of the hunting space, people would think the guy that's traveling and doing all the hunting is probably like the real serious hunter. The guy that never leaves his county is probably, it's the opposite. A lot of times, you know what I'm talking about. I mean, like, to me, the real deal guys are guys like Mo Shepherd, guys like my dad, guys like James Lawrence, a mentor of mine. Like, I'm so serious. I feel like the opportunities that I get have just been afforded me, and I'm so grateful for them. I wouldn't trade it. But I don't know. I think my dad built that into me as well. He was always, maybe in banking, people were, when you go to meet your banker, you put on your pretty face, you put on your pretty clothes, and you kind of have this polished veneer. And I think he saw through that, and he was always really drawn to authentic people, you know, that weren't trying to put on anything and were really kind of getting it done, you know. And in the hunting world, that translated to these guys that weren't doing it for accolades. And I just have continued to respect those kind of people, you know.
Mm-hmm. And that mimics a lot of the guests that we've had on the podcast, where you wouldn't know that guy unless you grew up in his hometown.
Yeah.
Because they're not, a lot of these guys, especially these older guys, they're not active on social media. They just go out there and they have a passion for, so we're talking deer hunting right now, but they have a passion for deer hunting. A lot of them on public land. A lot of them like to kill big deer or try to kill big deer. But they're not nationally known. They're not even regionally known necessarily, outside of maybe a couple guys that are somewhat active on social media. But there's a big part of that, because to me, when you meet somebody who has spent their whole life, say 30, 40, 50, 60 plus years in one area of a state, has hunted and walked it for that long and had success, they know certain things that your average guy who's got like a hunting club this year and he's bouncing over here, or he's traveling to this state and that state, they never build that history with a certain area and build not only the confidence, but the experience level that can transcend to more people if you can pick that person's brain and figure out exactly what they do and how they go about having success. And there's a lot of passion with that. So it's really cool to hear your dad really liked those guys even back then and brought you along with it. And that's kind of one thing I wanted to bring up while we're talking about kind of your family history and your upbringing. When, I don't know if it was a certain age or if you remember a certain person, who was the first real successful mountain hunter you ever met as a kid or maybe your adolescence that maybe started giving you a little bit of advice or would talk to you a little bit more, other than just show you a big deer they had killed?
You know, I wouldn't, let's say, that's a good question. Oh, I can tell you exactly who it was. He's a peer of mine. He's my buddy Scott Brown. Scott's maybe 4 years older than me. Scott's dad, Andy Brown, Andy's in his late 60s, and Andy has been on Bear Grease many times as one of the all-time greatest storytellers in the world, period. And so that was my good friend's dad, who was just this legit guy. But Scott, I worked with Scott when I got out of high school. We worked together and just spent a lot of time side by side. And man, he just tutored me really in really how my dad was really good at hunting deer one way. Scott really mentored me in hunting deer on a broader landscape level, using terrain features and funnels, and I would say Scott, my buddy Scott Brown. I love Scott. He's a great communicator, and I think he enjoyed that I was just like sucking it up, just listening to him, and he was probably a big influence on me when I was young. And then I was an adult when I met James Lawrence, who was James is in his late 70s now, but James was just a guy that probably never hunted outside of 30 square miles around his house, and just killed a lot of deer. And those guys know the land in a way that is hard to describe. It almost feels it's an exaggeration to say supernatural, but man, I'm telling you, our connection to the land when you live a lifetime in a certain place, I think we're tapping into stuff that's bigger than just like the logical, like read sign. I mean, like a human brain can collect thousands and thousands of data points that we don't even realize, you know. And when you're out with these old guys and they're like, "Hey, you should do this," I mean, it's like you probably should do that, you know, because they usually know what they're talking about. I mean, if they're legit, there's plenty of old guys that aren't legit or that aren't like great hunters. The age doesn't mean that you're going to be good at it. They're just talking about people that have hunted the same areas for years and years.
Do you remember well, let me backtrack for a second. One of the hardest points I think that a lot of individuals when they're hunting have is when they go from hunting with a mentor, say like your father or like their parent, whoever took them hunting, to then trying to go out on their own.
Yeah.
And it's one thing to try to mimic what that mentor was telling them. It's another thing about handling those experiences and situations out by yourself. What kind of challenge was it, or was it much of a challenge for you when you started hunting, maybe not with your dad so much, you started to go out on your own, maybe?
Yeah, I remember it vividly because it was when I went to college, got married and went to college, was 20 years old, I guess. And I moved from my hometown up here into the Ozarks. And the landscape's totally different. Where I used to hunt was, or where I said my dad had one way to kill a deer. We were hunting big pine plantations that had riparian zones that were hardwoods. He had one way to kill a deer, and that was to find white oak acorns on the grounds with deer droppings beside it. Like, that's how he killed deer, you know. And up here in the Ozarks, where there's massive amounts of land with thousands and hundreds of thousands of white oak trees, all dropping acorns at the same time, they weren't a limiting factor sometimes, you know, when they all made. And so I moved up here, and when I moved up here, I also started hunting private land for the first time ever, just because I just found access to some private land farms around here that, and when I say farms around here, that would be cattle operations, basically. Cattle pasture, fescue and Bermuda cattle pastures with hardwoods butting up against it. And that's when I started using what Scott Brown had taught me about hunting the mountains. It's kind of funny. I grew up in the mountains and further south than we are here. And but Dad and I drove even further south into the Gulf, what they call the Gulf Coastal Plain of Arkansas. It wasn't exactly flat country, but it was more flat. It wasn't really mountain country. That's where we did a lot of our public land hunting. It wasn't until I was an adult that I really started trying to hunt big mountains, if I could say it like that. I mean, I grew up in the mountains, but we were actually driving away from where we lived to do a lot of our bow hunting. And so when I moved up here is when just started hunting terrain features like heads of hollers, field corners, pinch, finding pinch point. I mean, just stuff that's like so simple today. At that time was like, dadgum, man, if you go to the back corner of that big old field, deer will come to that back corner within bow range. Just like going between point A and point B, they're gonna cut the back edge of that field, or there's a little funnel where a field corner comes in and a big holler comes up on the other side, and there's a little 30-yard strip. I mean, it was like revelatory to use terrain features, because my whole time growing up, we had hunted sign. We were looking for red hot sign, not sign that was a week old, sign that was made that day. Like he was that mobile with his hunting, I mean, we'd get out of the stand at 9:30 and hit the ground scouting, trying to find, a single white oak tree that had been dropping acorns and had deer sign under it. When I came up here, I was hunting. I was not hunting food at all because there was food everywhere. Hunting pinch points, travel corridors. The other thing that my dad was, he grew up, or he kind of peaked in the 90s, I'd say, in his hunting. He would have been in his 50s in the 90s. And that was right when scent control products hit the market. And I have a big spiel about scent control. Do y'all have scent control sponsors?
No.
Okay, great.
Fire away.
I just think I'm going to do a podcast one day on this, but in the 1990s, the guys that were working really hard trying to be the best hunters that they could be were trying to find the limiting factors of their success. And scent control came in and was like, hey, you got to use scent spray, you got to use carbon suits, you got to, wash your clothes, put them in trash bags, bake, all this stuff about scent. And who are the guys that's going to take all that energy and effort to do that? Like, who would it be?
Bow hunters.
It'd be bow hunters, and it'd be the guys that were really trying to get better. The guys that were really, it wasn't going to be the guy that bow hunted 3 days a year and had a crossbow and we're just messing around. Nothing against crossbows.
You're going to get some comment. I promise you're about
I wouldn't intentionally throw someone. But, and guess what? So those guys were like, man, trying to find the limiting factors of their hunting, trying to get better. Mm-hmm. They're the ones that are going to buy the scent control products, do the research, understand it. And guess what? They're going to have more success. But it wasn't because of scent control.
Yeah.
I mean, that was and so my dad to this day, if he were here, he would be like, Clay, slob hunter, man. Just he's driving his truck with the clothes he's going to go hunt. You believe that?
Pumping gas.
Yeah, pumping gas. Now, I do believe in ground scent. Now, when it comes to your boots, that's a different story. But so when I started hunting on my own, I wasn't buying scent control stuff. And probably it was maybe just like lack of organization, maybe a little bit of laziness. I was just like, I mean, we didn't think you could, like if you didn't have clean clothes, you might as well not even go hunting. That's how serious it was with Gary Newcomb. And so I started hunting and be sitting in the tree wearing clothes I wore in the truck, just feeling guilty, literally just like, Gary Newcomb's probably about to walk up here and whoop me with a stick, And anyway, I started killing deer. It was just like, it works without scent control. I started using the wind and learning about thermals and not in a technical way. Today there's so much information. Like I would probably get lost in a lot of the technical jargon that I hear a lot of people talking about. And it's great. I mean, people, it's cool when we dive into something so deep, but I would not technically be able to like describe in detail thermals, but gained a functional understanding of how to use them that's been good enough, But I started killing deer and it started being really fun. And then I got to where I started trying to kill big deer. And basically for 10 years, I set a goal that I was going to kill a 3.5-year-old deer with a bow every year. That was like a big goal. And back in when I was doing that, it would have been like early, like 2000 to 2010, essentially, I don't know. There weren't as many people doing that as there are today. I mean, and I'm not saying that was like generations ago, but I didn't know many people around here that were consistently killing just nice deer, and I don't think I killed one every year. There was probably a couple of years I didn't, and I also wasn't full time. Like I had a job, had a family, so I was just like piecing in hunts when I could, But having that standard really, that's when I learned how to deer hunt during those 10 years, and learned about, timing. And I would say probably for me, I heard you say one time, Jacob, that, everybody does it different. Like everybody like finds how they hunt. And if you were just to say, what is the one thing that's made you successful? I think what I learned was timing. I mean, I used to start hunting hard on the first day of season. And I mean, by the time we got to the rut, I'd kind of used up a lot of the time that I could be away from my family, could be away from work. And then I finally was like, shoot, 2 days at the right time is better than 10 at the wrong time. And so I started learning about timing. And for years, I was paying a lot more attention than I probably do today. But I used to could tell you the date and time of every single buck I'd ever killed. Just like I killed him on November the 6th at 6:38 p.m. I mean, I really tracked when I was killing deer, and I keyed in on that first 7 days in November, which had been incredible. Feels to me like the last for me, the last 10 years, that has not been the most productive time. I don't know why, but anyway, that's neither here
Well,
nor there.
timing's huge, and we've had this conversation in different ways with other guys who are true weekend warriors. They have a 9-to-5 job. They work during the week. They have a family, kids, all that stuff. Very limited time to hunt, and how valuable it is about the right timing and not wasting your time, because it's always great to spend time in the woods. But if you're trying to, first off, provide meat for the family, but also if your goal is to kill a nice buck, everybody knows there are certain times of the season where your odds are going to be a little bit higher. And some people will argue about this because some guys think your best time's early season on feed trees.
Well.
A lot of guys, again, talking the rut or even late rut or post rut. But maximizing your time and efficiency is huge, because not only keeps your family happier, you still get to spend some time hunting, but also hopefully maybe you'll be successful in that window of time. You don't have to, again, not waste your time, but spend time away from the family and your job at other points of the season that maybe you have lower odds of success at.
Man, I think one thing I've keyed in on in all of life is focusing on the actual thing that is the limiting factor. And I think with most hunters, the limiting factor is not knowledge, it's not gear, and it's probably, well, it relates back to time. The limiting factor is probably them taking care of their family, them taking care of their finances, them taking care of all the other parts of life, so that when it's time to hunt, they can go. I mean, really, if you could have a podcast about like, hey, let's talk about what really is holding you back. You get to hunt 3 days a year. Well, if you managed your life in a different way, maybe you could hunt 7. And I think that whole idea of being able to identify what actually is the limiting factor is so critical in all of life, because I think people focus on the wrong things. And for me, part of my hunting was doing just that. Like, I had to make sure that everything else was in order. And I mean, it kind of goes back to this philosophy of life, which I adhere to strongly, is like life's about balance. Like, I always knew, even when I was young and like just super passionate, just like you guys have it, the people that listen to this podcast have it. I mean, just like have this like drive and passion for hunting that would almost make you be reckless a little bit. I knew I could not, this was not worth sacrificing my life for. I couldn't sacrifice my family. I had to have balance. And now, 25 years later, it's paying off. And anyway.
All right, guys, we got another in the field tip for you today. One thing we're doing right now while we're out here scouting is looking at overlooked spots and overlooked by us. One thing we always do while we're in the field is using our tracker on onX Hunt to be able to not only see where we've gone, but where we haven't been, and that's what we're going to go look at. So today, we're actually going to work up into a drainage that we haven't been to before. We've walked all around it, but we haven't been up in it. And again, it's a very important factor of using the tracker so you can see where you have been and where you haven't. A lot of times those places you haven't been is your overlooked spots. So if you want to try onX Hunt, you can download onX Hunt today and use the code SOUTHERN and save 20% on your membership.
So it might be the off season, but we're still always thinking about whitetails. And if you're looking to get more mobile this fall and you're looking at saddle setups, the two most common designs you're going to see are a single panel design or a double panel design. They both have their advantages and disadvantages. A single panel design is going to be more comfortable right out of the box, while a double panel design is going to be much more adjustable and customizable to your fit. We always say on the podcast, saddles are kind of like boots. Different people are going to like different things. As a general rule of thumb, I found that heavier set guys typically like a single panel more than they like a double panel. But other than that, it's just really a matter of preference. I personally use both of these saddles. This is the Method 2 from Latitude, and this is the Lone Star from Latitude. I will say that the Method 2 is really nice because it's a 2-panel design. It's almost like you have a built-in back band that'll take a little bit of pressure off your back when you're sitting down. But if you're just getting into saddle hunting and you want something that's extremely comfortable right out of the box, the Lone Star is going to be your go-to. It has an advanced hip pinch reduction system in it, so right out of the box, this is going to be very comfortable, and you're not going to have the hip pinch issues that a lot of people have when they first get into saddle hunting. So if you want to be more mobile this fall, check out latitudeoutdoors.com to see these two saddles and a bunch of other mobile hunting gear. We've enjoyed them a lot, and I think you're going to enjoy them too. So outside of turkey calls and a shotgun itself, my favorite piece of gear I've ever bought when it comes to turkey hunting is a red dot sight. And my new favorite is the Vortex Viper enclosed red dot. So most of the time, I'm just using the 3 MOA dot. You know, I like just a clean single dot in my sight picture, nice and open sight picture. But I've already run into some situations this season where I'll actually switch to the reticle that is a 3 MOA dot with a 32 MOA circle around it. And the reason I like that reticle is because it allows me to see my nice little point of aim where I'm going to put that dot on the turkey's wattles, but also that circle is going to show me roughly where my pattern is going to go. And for me, it just makes it a little easier to visualize where my pattern is going through the woods, which helps me determine whether or not there's too much brush in front of me, or whether I'm gonna, half my pattern's gonna catch something between me and the turkey that I don't want it to hit. So I really like that multi-reticle option, and I think you're gonna like it too. So to check it out, along with everything else that Vortex offers, head on over to vortexoptics.com, or you can just hit the link in the description of this show.
Yeah,
I think there's a lot to that, and one thing we've learned with all the people we've interviewed over the years is exactly what you were saying. A lot of the most successful guys have managed their life in such a way where they have the freedom to go. And it doesn't have to be like a outdoor industry guy who works in the hunting industry and like you'd think they get to hunt all the time, but a lot of those guys really don't. But it's the guy who does has a landscaping business, or the guy who does sales, or the guy who does like whatever, like contract work, and he sets it up. And a lot of them too, they manage their family well also, and they can kind of have their cake and eat it too. Like you don't have to work in the hunting industry to have a good family life and get to hunt as much as you want. You just have to be intentional about what you're doing. And also on the flip side of that, we know a lot of guys who recklessly passionate about hunting, like a lot of us are, and they let it mess up their family life. And then all of a sudden, their family falls apart. And 3 years later, they don't even hunt anymore because their life is so messed up.
They're not married anymore.
Well, usually it's both. I mean, a lot of times you'll see it with guys where they'll get a divorce, and then just a couple years later, they don't hunt like they used to. Yeah. And it's like you kind of robbed yourself of both things at the same time.
Yeah, that's bad.
Yeah.
That's bad.
That's not good.
Well, not to kind of get us off that subject, but I do want to know, when you moved up here and started hunting on your own and started to learn the mountains, when did you start meeting other, I almost would say mentors, or other people that you highly respected in the area? And I don't know if you ever got a chance to hunt with them or to sit down and talk to them a good bit, but you started learning from other people who had a lot more experience in these areas and started picking different pieces of a puzzle together to figure out your style of how you like to hunt and have success in the mountains.
You know, I don't, certainly there's a lot of relationships that have been significant. It's hard to put it's hard for me to like directly answer that, because I would have been consuming every possible type of media, from watching hunting DVDs to reading magazines, which in the early 2000s, there weren't podcasts. Mm-hmm. YouTube pretty much, it probably wasn't in existence, but it wasn't like you could go learn something from YouTube until about, I don't know when that started. Yeah. But, you know, I mean, I'd say I was probably just a normal guy that was passionate about stuff. I was meeting people. I was talking to people. I started kind of thinking about formally talking to people about the outdoors, interviewing people in 2010. No. 2008. 2008 was when I had my first article published, which was just kind of a one-off deal. Like, I was not trying to be a writer or trying to do anything, but I had an article published about that deer that's right above your head. And that's when I was like, dang, that was kind of cool, you know, and then it started snowballing, and I started writing a lot more specifically about deer hunting. That's what I got started in. I was writing articles for deer hunting. Typically, I wrote some how-to stuff, but not a lot. It was mainly like big buck profiles, you know, for at the time North American Whitetail and some regional magazines and stuff. So that's kind of how, I guess that's when I started talking to people. As far as on the ground hunting with people, man, I didn't really like. I don't know. My dad was always envied guys that had. Now this is going to sound funny because I really value the relationships I have in my life, but there's not a. I don't want to say there's not a ton of people that there's some guys that when they go hunting, they're going with somebody. Like they're just, I did a lot of solo stuff. Like I know people that are really great hunters that almost won't go hunting unless someone goes with them. It's not like they're afraid or something. They just always have a buddy. I never really had that. I think because I was kind of like all over the place between where I lived here, where I lived back home, my schedule. So, I mean, like a Mo Shepherd would have been a mentor of mine, but I wouldn't have really hunted with him that much. I wouldn't have like been in the woods with him. So my dad would have been, probably the main mentor. Does that answer your question?
No, it does.
I don't feel like I did a good job.
Absolutely, because there's a lot of people that don't get the chance to go hunt with somebody, but they get the chance to talk to them.
Yeah.
And bounce ideas off. And maybe it's just they get to meet that person a couple times in their life, but they're impactful enough. They go out into the field and they start thinking a little bit differently of how they approach stuff and so on. Because I think everybody, when they think of a hunting mentor, they think of someone who physically takes them into the field.
Right.
But that's not always the case. Again, based off certain circumstances and who you meet, a lot of times a hunting mentor can just be someone you just get to talk to every now and then.
Yeah.
Bounce ideas off, what's happening, what's not working, and get their thoughts on it.
Yeah.
And then try to go and apply it. And again, to me, that was like the original way of communicating and learning outside of learning on your own before you had all this other media that people are sharing all their ideas in one place.
Yeah.
So that's the interesting, because me growing up, I grew up hunting with my uncles, and that's the only two deer hunters I knew at the time. I didn't have anybody else in the family that hunted. And just whatever they told me, that's what we did, and so on until I started meeting more people in college, and then after college. Now, also, so many different mountain guys in the state of Arkansas, but also other areas. Is there any common traits between successful, specifically mountain deer hunters that they all kind of have some similarities between?
That's a good question.
I was going to ask the exact same thing.
The traits. They get to go a lot, or most of the guys I'm thinking of are working jobs and stuff, but they go at the right time, and they just know the land, and they do their scouting. That's a good question. It seems like I would have a great answer. I'm not sure that I do. I mean, even though we're in the mountains right here, I mean, we're technically in the Ozarks. A little bit further east of here would be the Central Ozarks. There's a guy like Mo is pretty rare that all he hunts is like kind of big, deep mountain country, because where really a lot of my bow hunting here locally over the years has been on private land, which is just a different game. I mean, it's I don't really consider it like mountain hunting, even though we're still in the Ozarks, because you're just, you're using field edges and stuff. I mean, probably in a lot of the bow hunting, a lot of the deer that are in this room would have come from private land here in the Ozarks, which isn't saying a lot. I mean, it's not like it's fantastic deer hunting around here as compared to like the Midwest. It's just not. It's still pretty hard. But fields would be like such a critical part of it, because these fields are funneling deer, and it feels like that's a big feature. But somebody like Mo, who's hunting a lot of benches, pinch points, places in cliffs where deer are navigating through bluff lines and different things, and that's, to me, that is like, when I think of deer hunting, that's what I think of. But honestly, I've done more now that I'm an adult. I've done more of this kind of hunting that I'm talking about here close to my house than I have out in the mountains like Mo, honestly.
Yeah. Well, I mean, one big common trait, and you mentioned it, is having time to go and spending time out there and learning the land. And I would say pretty much all the very experienced whitetail hunters that we know, that's a common trait. I mean, very rarely you have somebody who you just drop on a property and they kill a big deer, or they kill a deer. A lot of it comes from that woodsmanship experience, but also woodsmanship and learning the land, but also knowing when to hunt and not waste their time. Like, we have a couple guests on our podcast that they're not, because we have such a long gun season in Alabama, they don't bow hunt a whole bunch. Older guys, they don't really bow hunt, but they gun hunt. But they gun hunt during a very specific window of time of when they need to go. They kill their bucks, and maybe they hunt for some does, hunt for some more meat, but they're done. They just hunt very, very concentrated time frame, hunt that public land, get their bucks killed, and leave. And again, that's kind of a common trait, just that timing window. Because again, we're not talking about wasting time, but if you are trying to be efficient with your time and your family, that's a huge aspect. I feel like the more you do it and the more years you have doing it and building confidence with it, you become a lot more effective in that circumstance.
Yeah. Just to add to that, like there's a guy in Alabama that we interviewed who, his name's Scott Seals, and he hunts the same place that I grew up hunting, the same WMA that when I was a little kid, I was hunting there. And like, man, I'm still terrible at hunting there. Like I can't get on the deer on that place like I want to at least. And Scott is so good at it. And I remember, I think it was last season, it was December and he was texting us, and December's the rut on this particular place. And he's out on the lake catching crappie. I'm like, what are you doing, Scott? Like, you need to be out there. He's like, oh, it's not quite right yet. And then a gun hunt comes up. He goes out there and he kills a nice one. And then he puts someone else and they go out there and they kill a nice one. And he just knows. And like your answer earlier where you're like, where you said, I wish I had a better answer. I think that actually is a really good answer, because I think just us being curious, and also a lot of people that listen to the podcast, you kind of expect and you kind of want a really complicated answer, because you're like, it has to be complicated, but it's really not. Like a lot of those guys, it's very simple. It's knowing the land really well, and it's going at the right time. I mean, that's kind of it. There's a lot of nuance in that depending on where you're at, but that's kind of it.
I think I'm probably more of a volume hunter than a real technical. Like I hear some guys talk, and I mean, I'm just like, I couldn't articulate exactly like this guy's doing about the way he's hunting, like bedding areas and this and that. And part of it is that I'm just not in that world as much. Kind of the last 15 years of my life, my primary focus of communication and hunting has been for bears, even though whitetails is equal of a passion. It actually is. But I've kind of dropped out of the I don't want to say I've dropped out of the whitetail space, because I haven't, but I've not focused on communicating about it. So when I listen to you guys and other people, I'm kind of like, wow, man, I'm a little behind, but when I say I'm a volume hunter, I have no problem sitting all day. I like to kind of grind. And maybe I hear some guys that are like, well, kind of like my dad. My dad would rather scout than hunt. He'd rather hunt. If he had 2 days to hunt, he might only hunt one afternoon. And that was his way. I was the opposite of that, in that I would probably find a mediocre spot and sit there for 2 days and kill a deer. But at the right time. The right time of the year, just knowing bucks are on their feet, bucks are going to be moving,
Now, it wouldn't be a Clay Newcomb podcast if we didn't talk about bears. And I do want to talk about that, because actually in the past, when we try to get you on the show, this is before we were doing everything in person, every time I'd reach out to you about doing it, you're like, man, I'm out in Alaska right now. I'm leaving for, going different places bear hunting. How old were you when you first got introduced to bear hunting, and how did you get introduced to bear hunting?
Yeah. So I was 22 years old before I killed a bear. So I killed the first bear in 2001 in Arkansas. The first year it was ever legal to bait bears in Arkansas. So essentially, the bear story here, and it would be similar in other places, just the pieces and time frames moved around a little bit. But essentially, bears were extirpated across much of their range between 1900 and the 1970s. So there were like 3 generations of people that kind of didn't interact with bears. And in Arkansas, there was a reintroduction here where in the 1950s and 60s, they brought in 254 bears from Manitoba, Canada, and Minnesota, brought them down in wire cages and pickup trucks and turned them loose in 3 different locations here in the Ozarks and some of the wash stalls. And basically, those bears the last one they turned out was like 1968 or something. I was born in 1979. The first Arkansas bear season in modern times was in 1980. From 1980 to 2001, you could only hunt bears just hunting them like deer. They were killing a very small number of bears every year because it's just really difficult to just find bears out in the mountains. Population started to grow so much that the Game and Fish, man, they did an incredible job. They said, we want to manage the bears in Arkansas by bow hunters hunting on private land, hunting over bait. It was an incredible thing that they did. 2001, it became legal to hunt bears over bait in Arkansas. And I lived in a great area for bear, and me and my dad started baiting bears, and I killed a bear. This is basically established as pure fact. I'm not even taking detractors anymore, but I killed the first bear in the state of Arkansas legally over bait. Because at the crack of dawn on October 1st, 2001, I mean, literally, we had just climbed up in the tree. The light was gray. When I saw this bear coming up the mountain, he just looked like a black ghost floating through the woods, not making a sound. And I shot him. I mean, at the crack of dawn on the first day it was ever legal. I used to, Jacob, just be like tell people, if you have if you want to contradict this story and say that your dad killed the first one, I would take that information. For 20 years, no one said a word. It's official. Clay Newcomb killed the first legal bear in the state of Arkansas over bait, 2001, with a bow. And at the time, we didn't know anything about bears. Mm-hmm. People that killed bears were either outlaws or lucky. Literally, there were guys in our town that were baiting them and killing them, and we all knew it. And it was a small group of people, and I think that was happening in other places, like guys that killed bears every year. It's like, how do you kill a bear every year with a bow on the first day of season? And anyway, and so there were some people killing bears, but it was just an anomaly. There's a picture of me and my brother sitting by a truck when I was like 12 by a bear that a guy had killed. And it was just like, wow. It was like looking at a dinosaur, And so didn't really think much about bears. Like, didn't grow up thinking a lot about them. But that first bear that I killed, I had killed deer. I had killed turkey. I was, for a 22-year-old, a avid woodsman. And when I walked up to this bear, I realized that I knew nothing about it. Like, I didn't know when they bred. I didn't know what they ate. I didn't know where this bear lived during the winter. The bear had, I don't tell everybody this, the bear let out the most incredible death moan I've ever heard a bear, that first one I killed. We didn't even know that bears did that. Do you know about bear death moans? And so we shoot this bear with a bow, and it just like runs off like 50 yards and just like, boo. And that's incredible. Like that. I used to not like to talk about it. I talk about it now because it's like there's only like a couple animals on planet Earth that have a death moan.
What are some of the other ones? Just real quick.
Cape buffalo. That's actually the only other one that I know that kind of officially. That's not something we celebrate. But it's like something that's just unique about that animal. Very unique, very human-like. And walk up to this bear, you just recognize that I knew nothing about it. And I was going to U of A at that time, University of Arkansas, and wasn't a very good student in anything I was studying. But I literally went to the U of A library and started finding the research thesis projects of University of Arkansas students, and there were only like 5 at the time. And so I checked these books out. They were bound books, but it was thesis projects from all the research that had ever been done on Arkansas black bears, which had only been going on for about 12 years. Like the first research they were doing on was like 1988 or something. And started like almost memorizing these theses for no reason. I was just interested in it. And that's when I learned about that Arkansas used to be known as the bear state. that's when I learned about bear grease, this term that was used. I was like, bear grease? What's bear grease? And it was, I couldn't understand it. I didn't know why I liked it so much, but I just started learning about bears. And then the next year I was like, hey Dad, I want to bear hunt again. He was helping me because I was in college and had a family. He was living down in bear country and was actually doing most of the work down there. And I was like, it's bear hunt again. And he was like, you want to kill another one? Like, he couldn't understand why I wanted to kill another bear. And I was like, I remember saying to him, I said, Dad, there's not been a single day that's passed since the time I killed that bear till now that I haven't thought about that bear. And that just started a journey, a relationship with wildlife, a specific species of wildlife that kind of defined my career, but more than my career. I mean, it is a career in that, but it's more than that. I mean, it really was a journey of learning about bears. And we could take the conversation 100 different ways from there, but.
Well, bears are so fascinating because I killed my first bear out here in 2020. I think it was that year. And it was an amazing experience from the aspect of seeing this bear. Like, I'd seen bear going to Gatlinburg, Tennessee. That was a big vacation spot. Me and my family growing up, we'd go up there for a weekend or something. Then you see bears in Cave Cove driving around and stuff. But to be able to hunt them, and then, of course, knew of you at the time, kind of roughly knew you a little bit through the podcast. And I could see how somebody could get very passionate about it if your state has that opportunity. And in the Deep South, two of the bigger states, well, there's a couple of states that are big bear hunters, but you got Georgia, East Tennessee, North Carolina, Arkansas, like kind of those four. And then Florida just got their season back. And we actually get quite a few questions about guys who are interested in getting into bear hunting and have very little experience, but they're curious about probably stuff they've heard you talk about and other people talk about, just what it's like to not only hunt bears and how hard it can be to find them, but also the food aspect of it. And talking about bear grease, I want you to explain what bear grease is real quick. That's that term. Like, what does the term bear grease mean? Yeah.
So, well, bears, they've biologically got to make a year's salary in 5 to 9 months. That's the way I think of it. They got to gather a year's worth of groceries in. Our bears are denning typically from like December through March, so 4 months. So they've got 8 months to make a living, and the way that they do that is they put on fat. So they're incredibly good at gaining fat. A bear can double his weight from spring to fall. Like a 200-pound bear in the fall could weigh in the spring. 200-pound bear in the spring could weigh 400 pounds in the fall. I mean, that's possible. Mm-hmm. And so bear grease is the rendered fat of a black bear, which is deep history in America. In the Mississippi River drainage, like if you looked at America, the Mississippi River drainage was like a highway for bear grease going out of New Orleans, going to the world. I mean, like, bear grease was a major commodity back in the day when animal fat oils were really significant in the world. Like the whalers. Mm-hmm. I mean, like, animal fat oil at one time would have been like butter. And I mean, probably 90% of American households today would have butter in their refrigerator. There was a time when 100% of people would have had animal fat oil in their house, for daily usage, for cooking, for burning oil lamps, for lubricating stuff, for conditioning leather, whatever. And anyway, so bear grease became this. It was an incredible animal oil. So we render bear fat and use it. It's healthy, and just kind of an obscure, cool thing. But
it's delicious. I saved mine off my brother's bear, and rendered it out, and I still got a jar of it left. I got one jar left. I've been kind of holding on to. Hopefully, so I can maybe get the opportunity to try to hunt bear again. But for guys, like, what was the learning curve for you? Like, of course, you're saying like they legalized baiting, so you could use bait. At what point did you try to kill a bear without the use of bait on like public land? Because I mean, that's a possibility. That's an opportunity here.
Yep.
What was that shift and change like when you tried to start implementing that?
Yeah. So we hunted over bait for a lot of years and just learned about bears and just had a blast getting to interact with this animal that is so elusive. I mean, a bear is a low density animal. You go into any kind of a bear hunt knowing that, deer, there might be 40 deer per square mile, 50 deer per square mile in an area with a high deer density. A high bear density is like 1 bear per square mile. And that's like biological terms. Like you might see 5 bears on your bear bait, but you're drawing bears from a long ways. There's a lot of square miles around there that don't have a single bear. Bears are using different parts of the landscape. So, if you're talking about population densities, like 1.2 bears per square mile would be a lot of bears. So you think about that, having a square mile of big woods, like there's 1 bear there. It doesn't really play out like that on the ground, but that's the way you got to think about it. So to bait these bears and to be able to see them and interact with them was so cool. I killed my first bear on public land on purpose in 2013. I killed my first one in 2013, and it came after actually 4 years of hunting public land trying to do it. And I can say this now with great certainty. Man, there was nobody on purpose year after year even killing bears in national forest. I mean, back like Mo Shepherd is one of them who was. And I mean, there were just a handful of guys in the state that would have been targeting bears on public land on purpose, hunting them like deer. Because everybody in the state would have had a bear tag in their pocket when they were deer hunting. So I'm not saying people didn't kill bears on public land, because they did. But it was opportunistic deer hunters. Like if you would have interviewed, 95% of those people would have been like, dude, I was just hunting and he came by. Or, maybe I found some bear sign, but there was a scrape there too, and I was deer hunting and a bear came by. I mean, and so anyway, about 2010 is when I just recognized, I almost thought it was impossible. The world's come a long way in 15 years. You hear these stories about people that kind of like, like my dad, like bow hunting and him killing a doe back in the day, and it was like a big deal. It's kind of becoming that way with bear in a way, because so many guys have been successful on public land, and it's very doable, but it is a difficult hunt. But no, it took me. I think I wrote an article that was called like 40 miles in 4 years or something, and I added up all the hunts I had done, and 40 miles doesn't sound like that far, but in this part of the world, 40 miles is a pretty long way. I think I'd added up all the days I hunted and all the time I'd walked, and it wasn't like I don't know, I was hunting just a couple of days every season, like I'm going to kill a bear. And finally I killed one. This bear right here, actually. That was the first bear I ever killed on public land. And killed him on the last day of the Arkansas bear season, which was November the 30th, 2013. And it was a pretty wild story, because I went to a spot I hadn't been to in several years, had one day to hunt. It was real cold. I didn't wear many clothes because I was planning on walking like 9 miles, this little route I had. And I didn't get very far from the truck, really. Started pulling up this leg on this mountain, and I found a big pile of fresh bear scat on November 30th, which I knew enough to know that that's pretty good. Because what I would later learn is that bears start winding down, like their home ranges start to massively shrink the deeper you get into the winter. And by the time they're about to den, like they might be covering a couple 100 square yard area that they might mill around in, but it just starts to hone in. Anyway, I found this fresh bear scat like just after daylight, and I was like, it's the last day of season. There's a bear close. I said, that's all I need to see. and there was a little saddle right up above where this was, and I thought, I bet he'll come through that saddle. I went and sat in the saddle, got cold, sat there for like 2 hours, and the wind was blowing hard out of the west, and I got so cold I was shaking, and I was like, man, I got to get up. And I thought, well, I'm just going to walk into the wind off out of this saddle. I did, walked like 200 yards from where I was sitting, and jumped up on a big old rock. There's actually a picture of where I killed that bear right behind that safe. I went back and took a picture of what it looked like. I was standing on this rock, and it was rifle deers. This will show you a little bit about how primitive I was in my hunting. That's the wrong word. I didn't own a deer rifle. 2013, I didn't own a deer rifle, but it was gun deer season, so gun bear season. What I did have was a muzzleloader. So I was carrying a muzzleloader during rifle deer season. You know, I could have been carrying a 30-06 or something. So I got this muzzleloader, jump up on this rock, just kind of sitting there, just looking at the side of the mountain, and I see a bear's head like lift up out of the rocks and kind of drop back down. Just caught movement. Throw up the gun and zoom the scope in, and I see these big old front legs, go straight up in the air, and this bear was laying on his side, and he rolled over, and I saw his feet go up like this. And man, I'd been after a bear in National Forest for 4 years, and I'd seen 2 bears in 4 years walking around, and since learned timing is everything on those bears too. I was hunting them late, and anyway, I see this bear, and I'm like, holy cow, there he is. He's only like 60 yards, but bunch of brush, and he's kind of down in the rocks. And long story short, I stepped from rock to rock without making a sound, and I'd get to 40 yards and pull up the gun and see if I could see him, and I could just see bits and pieces of him. And so I'd have to get closer, and I'd pull up the gun. And this whole time, wind's hitting me in the face because I'd gone off the right way. And I'm just wide open. It's not like there's brush. This bear could just look up and see me at any time, but he's laying on his back, just like sleeping. He's awake. He's moving around. And anyway, I finally get to 25 yards of this bear. Like, there's not a twig between us. And he's just right there. But I can just see, well, actually, what I could see was the top of his head laid over a rock. Like he was, and he's facing me, and he's got his chin down. Anyway, I'm at 25 yards, and I sit down, and I'm waiting for him to stand up. That's what I'm thinking about. Like, he needs to stand up. And I can't see how big the bear is or anything. And I think about whistling at him, trying to get him to stand up. Or I think I'm just going to sit here until he stands up on his own. You don't know what to do. It's the heat of the moment. This is when the magic happens or you screw it up. And I'm just right on top of this bear. And, 4 years in the making, this is what's happening in my head. This is also the same year that I stepped out. I was talking to you guys earlier about kind of your entrepreneurial journey. It was the first year that I'd staked everything on getting this bear hunting magazine, which was like a massive risk. I mean, like, if somebody had come to me and said, Clay, should you do it? I'd be like, no, you should not do that. So there was a lot going on in my life at that time. I'm 25 yards from this bear, and I think that it is a 200-pound black bear, like black-colored bear. That's, in my mind, that's what I'm looking at. Anyway, I was sitting there, and I'm like, and I see the top of this bear's head laid over this rock, and I go, man, I can drive tacks with this gun at 50 yards. I'm at 25, and I just put the crosshairs right on the top of his skull. And he never flinched. And killed this bear, walked up to it, and it was, I think he weighed 450. He truly did, because we hauled out. Yeah, it's a long story. I could go into all of these. I'm just telling you, the bear weighed 450. And he was color phase. It was this brown color, which was really unique. And I got to tell you, I don't know that I've ever told this publicly, but it was super meaningful to me. That year, that was November 30th, 2013. In June of that year is when I acquired Bear Hunting Magazine, which catapulted me out of landscaping. I was a full-time landscaper That's what I did. And this opportunity came up, and it was pretty wild that I was able to do it. But I took this business from this guy, and it was just a small little business. It wasn't like, I didn't like pay a bunch of money for it. But I had a family. My wife didn't have a great job or any. It wasn't like I had a sugar mom at home. She worked incredibly hard, but she's in education. Like everything was on the table, everything. And we felt like this is what we needed to do from God. We just were like, yeah, this is the direction. Right during that time, it truly felt like that the thing was just about to crumble. It cost way more money to get into it than I thought. I ended up, having to go back to my dad and say, Dad, I don't, my dad, super generous guy, but it's not like he's just, like I'm getting deep into the personal stuff now. But it was a super stressful time. The image in my mind at that time was like, you are going to fumble this thing. This thing's about to bounce out of your hand. But I really felt like that God was in it. That November 30th, when I shot that bear and walked up to it, and it was a 450-pound color-phased bear, and it was at the end of this 4-year intentional process of killing a bear on public land. I didn't hear God's voice, but I did, and I said it out loud what I knew was true. I said it. The first thing I said out loud is I said, God is gonna help me. Like God is gonna help me. I knew He was gonna help me. It was like supernatural, no doubt. I just was like, God is gonna help me. It was like this metaphor of I'd been striving, fighting, and then something happened that I could have never made happen. And it was manifested in that I'd killed this big old bear that was way bigger than I thought. And from that day forward, not a single day since then has my career, and I'm talking about my career, but going back to the balance of life, it's not just my career, but for the story, from that day, my life has been on an upward trajectory, specifically inside my career, that has not stopped. And it didn't have anything to do with the bear, but it was a significant moment, that very real to me. Like as real as me putting my hands on that bear and getting my hands bloody, gutting him, was that it was like a concrete thought, but yeah, well, I call him rock slide, because I killed him in a rock slide.
Oh.
It was this big like boulder patch on the side of this mountain. But no, and going back to the deer hunting, like I got started in deer hunting, but then at that time, bears just like I always tell people, I didn't choose bears. Bears chose me, like for real. Even from that first bear that I killed, it's like I didn't really think much about it until it happened. And then I was just like, holy cow, this animal, just incredible. I started learning about him. And I was writing articles, deer hunting, like I was a deer hunter, and started focusing on bears. And I had some friends that were wonderful friends that I remember, one of them in particular being like, what are you doing messing around with these bears? Like, it was almost like, you're throwing your career away, Clay. Nobody really cares about bears. Because I'd had my foot in the door to be a freelance writer. Like, probably the most writing I ever did was 1 year. I don't even remember what year, probably 2010. I think I published like 25 articles, all of them about deer. So it's like, that's the direction I was going. And then it was kind of like, just like a switch of the hand, and bears with the business and just with my passion. It was almost like I had this interest that I didn't really understand, but I was a deer hunter and that's the way everything was going. But I was like, man, dadgum bears. I like those bears. And then got Bear Hunting Magazine, and it set me up perfectly because I was, as I started learning about bears, like the whitetail stuff, I never quit whitetail hunting, but like it wasn't the focus of my intellectual pursuits. I still loved it and did it. And I basically for a decade really did what you guys are doing with whitetail stuff. Like I'm telling you, 15 years ago, there was nothing about bear hunting. If you want to learn about bear hunting, they were going to say, go put out a pile of donuts, shoot a bear. Like it was like the redheaded stepchild of the hunting industry. And there was no information. And for a decade, through Bear Hunting Magazine, I set out to dissect every possible way, and we were hyper focused on tactics, on different from dog hunting in the Appalachians in the West to hunting over bait and like where I'm at and in Canada to spot and stalk hunting in the Rockies to Alaskan coastal hunting. I mean, bears are like whitetails in some degree, except even more. There's such a geographic distribution of bears that the ways that you hunt them are just like radically different, you know? Like the difference between a hound hunt for bears and hunting on the coast of Alaska. I mean, the only thing that's similar is that you're hunting the same animal. Everything else is different, you know? And so we set out to just dissect and talk to every expert and spec out how to judge animals. So anyway, that's kind of what I did. And it's funny talking to you guys because when I started working for Meat Eater in 2021, it's like all of a sudden I kind of had a wider space to talk about stuff. And I don't want to say I got back into deer hunting, but I kind of did. Like for 10 years, like bears were like the focus to the detriment of deer hunting, you know. But anyway, no. So I respect all these guys that have, you know, you step out of deer hunting for 10. And again, I didn't step out of deer hunting, but I stepped out of thinking about deer hunting a lot for 10 years. And anyway,
that's really cool, and I appreciate you sharing that story. That's an incredible story. And bear hunting to me is really interesting. We were talking about some books about bear hunting in like the 1800s in Louisiana. And what you said earlier is really interesting about how they got extirpated from their range and then they started coming back. But there's like 3 generations that just kind of missed the boat. And you kind of saw that with deer. You're seeing it right now with quail and stuff. You saw it with turkeys where there's periods where they went away and then we built them back up. And I almost feel like right now we're kind of building up to like maybe like a bear heyday because it's pretty popular these days.
Yeah.
And people are really getting into it, and there's really good bear numbers here and in the Appalachian Mountains where you can still go do it. And even in Alabama, we don't have a season yet, but our population's growing. And it's just fascinating. I feel like guys who are good bear hunters, all the guys that we've talked to, yourself included, are just like they're just some woodsmen.
Yeah.
You know, like they really know what's going on. And they're just it's a different kind of hunter. It's just fascinating and it's interesting. And the grease is cool. The bear grease is cool. Eating them's cool. Having the rug is cool. The skulls are cool.
Man,
what's not to like about bears?
Whatever's happening ecologically on this continent has been beneficial for the black bear in an incredible way. Every research population of bears in America is either stable or expanding. Like if you could pick one big game animal that is absolutely thriving, like more than anything, I would say it's the black bear.
Do you think that has to do with a lot of places being reforested that weren't previously like forested areas?
Well, like so here in Arkansas, like you know, the early 1900s were considered the wood age. Everything was wood. They clear cut everything. Like mass. I mean, just imagine if your car was made of wood, your house was made of wood, your fences were made of wood, your shipping containers were made of wood. You know, like they cut everything. The national forests were instituted in the early 1900s by Teddy Roosevelt and all these guys. They created the national forest. So they started preserving these things. By the 1950s, 60s, 70s, those forests that had been cut were then mature forests. And so here, that was a critical part of it, is that, bears, what the ecological niches that they can fill is incredible, but big, unbroken, unfragmented hardwoods is a good habitat for them, And so, yeah, it does have to do with that. But they're learning to. I mean, a bear, on some cognition tests, bears are equivalent to the great apes in their ability to perceive what's going on. I mean, they are just so fascinating. They're intelligent, but they're also omnivores, which the specialists of the world are struggling. Like if you think about it, like caribou, moose, even like turkeys and quail, like pretty hyper specialized animal. The generalist omnivores are thriving. I mean, in black bears, there are 8 species of black bears on planet Earth. 8 species. At one time, there were hundreds of species of bears. Hundreds of species in the fossil record. Today, there are 8 species of bears. And the American black bear, Ursus americanus, there are twice as many black bears on planet Earth as all the other species combined. So, a black bear he's not the best at anything, but he's good at almost everything. They can climb a tree. They can swim a giant lake. They can dig a hole in the ground big enough to park a 3-wheeler. They can eat grass like a horse. They can eat an elk carcass. They can eat palmetto fronds in Florida. They can eat blue mussels off the coast in Alaska. I mean, they're pretty incredible. And anyway, I could talk about it forever.
I saw your video. I know you probably get this with people you talk to, but your video where you were hunting with a recurve bow and the bear, I think you were hunting here, the bear like runs into that little vernal pool or that pond you were hunting.
Yeah.
I saw that like years ago, and I was like, that is the coolest thing I've ever put my eyes on in my entire life. That was the coolest thing I'd ever seen. And that's when I was like, I need to go try to hunt a bear. Yeah. I still haven't done it, really. I've been in places where I could have shot a bear, but I was deer hunting.
Yeah.
I wasn't bear hunting on purpose. I hope to change that this September.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, man, there's just... You do a good job of explaining that. And we were talking about those books earlier. Is it Jim McAfee? He sent us...
Maybe?
Yeah, he sent us some books, and I've been reading one of them. And it was about Mississippi and the Mississippi River and the forest there and the first settlers. And it was saying that the bears were so numerous that people would like have to go shoot them out of their gardens every morning. It's like they'd go kill a bear before breakfast. Mm-hmm. They're just everywhere.
Yeah, a lot of people in the South wouldn't realize how this was bear country. I mean, the Mississippi River Delta, Mississippi, Arkansas, Louisiana, I mean, that was bear country. I mean, massive, like the southern bear hunt, and it would have not all, but the majority of it been with hounds. I mean, there's big history in this part of the world with bear hunting. But, they were extirpated from their range and just kind of erased it, It's pretty interesting when you look at, when you understand culture and people and wildlife, you can erase something from functional memory in about 2 generations. Like, people are really focused. I heard someone say the other day that humans are capable of basically understanding like 4 generations, I'm pretty sure. Let's do the math. Like, you probably know quite a bit about your dad and your grandfather. Mm-hmm. And then if you have kids, Jacob, maybe one day, Lord willing, your grandkids will remember you. Like, we kind of have like our hand on like 2 generations. Like, hopefully I'll know my grandkids and I know my grandpa. But dude, you get back to my great grandfather, I know very little about him. When it comes to wildlife, it takes about 2-3 generations to just like wipe the slate clean from hunting, because hunting is handed down. It's not handed down in books. I mean, who knows? Today it's so much different with video and all these things. We never had that before. I mean, humans have been around a long time. We've never had this kind of communication before. But typically, hunting is handed down by personal contact with people. So, I think about Arkansas. When I showed up in 2001, being from the bear state, my people being from western Arkansas in the mountainous region, like, we knew nothing about bear. Like, zero reference point for bear. Zero. And then when I started learning about the history, and this was the bear state and the bear oil trade in this part of the world, market hunters, and it was just like, I couldn't believe that I never knew this stuff, So it's all pretty fascinating to me.
I've got to ask just a few questions about hunting bears, some general questions, just for people that are going to want to hear that from you. For the most of the guys I'm thinking of that are going to try bear hunting or want to get into bear hunting, they have a deer hunting background. Is there anything that translates between deer hunting and bear hunting?
Sure, 100%.
Okay.
Ben, kind of like you saying that there's people figure out ways to be successful. My journey with public land bear hunting is exactly like my dad's. I know one way to kill a bear on public land, and it's really simple, and it translates, and that is find fresh bear scat in early season and hunt them like deer. That's that simple. I mean, but the way that bears are distributed across the landscape, they're not going to be everywhere. Like if we just went out here to this mountain across the road, you could look at that mountain and probably under the canopy of what you can see with your eye, there's probably 25 deer. If you're just looking at, you might go in good bear country and see a big mountain. You're in the best bear country in your state. There may not be a bear under the canopy of what you can see because they have bigger home range. I mean, a male bear might have a 20 square mile home range. A female might have a 8 to 10 square mile home range. She's going to utilize that home range in different ways based upon mass crop, time of year, you understand? Mm-hmm. So it's all about just finding them. So you might have to walk. Now, bear hunting, I'll walk for 5 days of a 5-day hunt and never find what I'm after and never see a bear. I mean, you scout until you find them. And when you find them, you'll know it. And some years it's better than that. I mean, there's times when you just find like a spot. When mass crop is limited, it's the best years. And if you can find the mass crop and cover enough ground, now you might find a whole side of a mountain that you're like, well, Clay, there were white oak acorns raining on the ground. I was in good bear country, no bears. It's like, keep moving. They're not there. The mountain 2 mountains over that has the exact same situation, they may be pounding it. It may look like a bear zoo over there. I mean, they make trails. They just pad out the ground with trails. They leave a lot of scat right where they eat. And basically, that's what I just learned just by being out in the woods. It's like, when you're in them. And this is probably the best. This is probably the best tip that I've got. And I don't do a lot of these podcasts anymore where I talk about bear hunting tips because I want to keep it to myself, Jacob.
You're working it out of you.
No, there's no secrets really. But in the early season when the acorns are not falling real good and most of them are still up in the trees, bears can climb a tree like a gray squirrel. And when they do, they make a ton of noise. And it's all about timing. Like you don't always see bears climbing because once the acorns fall and hit the ground, like they quit climbing. They don't need to climb. They just eat acorns off the ground. But in the early season, and some seasons overlap. If you have a season like I think Georgia starts sometimes around the 10th of September, you can almost be guaranteed the bears they're going to be climbing that time of year. Arkansas season is usually later in September, and some years I've seen bears climbing on October the 1st, but I've also seen September the 20th, the ground be blanketed with white oak acorns, and there's no reason. But anyway, you can hear them. You hear them. I mean, I remember the first time I heard a bear climb a tree, I bet I was 150 yards from it. It's like breaking limbs, as big as, inch and a half limbs, just snapping them off. And they just make a racket, and I'm telling you, you can get right under the tree and shoot them. Now, I've never shot one out of a tree. I have zero problem. It's not like turkeys. It's not like there's something unethical about shooting a bear out of a tree. Zero. No, shoot them out of a tree. It's just a great way to find them. But usually you don't. I mean, they go up there. Sometimes they spend a lot of time. But Clay Newcomb, my son, was it last year? 2 years ago, he did that. He heard one, zoomed in on it, was waiting for it at the base of the tree when he came down. But when it came down, it saw him, and so it spun around kind of to the backside of the tree and was just like looking at him. He's like 5 yards from it, and when it hit the ground, it was just running. Now that I remember the story, he had actually shot one, and he was not hunting. He was actually tracking a bear that he'd shot, and he heard one, went to it, sitting there with his bow. He actually could have killed it. But anyway, that's probably the best time. I used to, when I killed rock slide, my thought was that the best time would be to hunt them later in the season. And so I was hunting my thought was after the leaves were off, you could see bears really good. Because they're black. They stand out like a sore thumb when you see them. And so I spent all those years hunting the late season and finally lucked into one. Then when I started hunting early, I was like, oh, this is the time to hunt them. They're just much more active, leaving a lot more sign. Home ranges are much wider, better chance you're going to find them. And I mean, as far as where you're going to want to hunt, man, you guys are prying out of me. It's no secret anymore. But I mean, bears want to be if I were looking at a piece of land, I would want to go to the darkest, nastiest, dirtiest corner of that place where there's no roads, no people, and that's where a bear's going to want to be. I mean, it's not always. It's just been where I hunt. That's where I want to go to kill a bear. You can kill them. I hear guys finding them close to roads and stuff, but they really like that, just the nasty country. And I mean, in the fall, they're going to spend a lot of time on the ridges and stuff wherever there's acorns, or just wherever there's acorns. It's easier to hunt them on the ridges because you can see, but down in the hollers, there's that's where they spend a ton of time. But they're harder to kill down there because the thermals are so crazy. So I try to focus my time on the ridges, just trying to find them feeding on the ridges or traveling. But they're down in the hollers, man. Down in the water. Like some of these places around here, probably just like the Appalachians, be like super cool and water and wet and thick. And they can smell everything, man. Those bears know where to bed, where they're smelling everything. So I mean, those bears are hard to kill down there. But so that's probably my best spiel.
Yeah. No, I appreciate that. I mean, it's one of those things that, I'll be honest, I was so lucky. I think you told me this when I texted you when I killed my bear. It's the luckiest hunt of my entire life because I was there for one day. The first day I tried to kill a bear, I had a deer tag in my pocket, but all Thomas had on camera was bears. And I seen 2 bear that day and killed the second one.
Yeah.
And it's like, you told me like that never happens. Like,
well, I mean, you were just in the right spot. I
Yeah.
mean, you were just in the place where they wanted to be. So, I mean.
Well, that's one thing I did just want to touch on this with you is that year, Mass crops, talked to a couple other mountain guys. They're like, Mass is pitiful this year. There wasn't much of anything. There's this one canyon system that he ended up scouting in that just had a bunch of hickory nuts in it.
Yeah.
And they were just stacked in there, like the bear.
Yeah.
But one thing I just want to touch with you on, because of mass in the mountains, you don't always find bear in the same areas. Like they move based off mass. Is that pretty accurate?
Oh, yeah.
So like if you have a bad year or something like that and there's no mass, like you're not going to find bear even though you might have seen a bear there last year.
That's right. Absolutely. I mean, they're utilizing their home range however they need to survive. Just because you saw a bear there last year means nothing really, other than that's a bear's range, and probably there's more there if there's one, probably. Mm-hmm. But the other thing people ask is they see bears in the summer, and they're like, "Oh man, I'll be coming back here in the fall." the bears have a different usually summer range from fall range, and you'll see bears in the summer in places that you won't see them. I mean, like in this town I live in, there's always bears that come through around here during the summer, but in the fall you're just not going to see them. Like anyway, so the best bear sign is a sign that was made yesterday or today, and you're hunting it. There's no guarantees, and that's been and again, there's probably people now that have a more articulate understanding of it than I do, but with the way that I hunt and have been successful is, there's years I don't even see a bear. I mean, there's years that you can make it look easy, and then there's other years where I'll do everything right, and like 2 years ago, and I don't get to bear hunt like I want to, like that every year. Mm-hmm. Honestly, in 5 years, probably 2 of those years do I dedicate to trying to kill one in national forest. But I remember last year was one of them. I hunted 6 full days and never saw a bear. Never hardly even found fresh bear scat. It's hunting all these pretty good places, So it's kind of it's you can't be validated by seeing game when you're hunting bear like that.
I got 2 last little bear questions, but that doesn't have to do with like hunting them. One, like when you kill a big bear, like I think, in my opinion, anything over 300 pounds, to me, that's huge. I'm sure you're quite a bit different because you kill some real big bear. If you kill one on public land like that, how do you go about getting it? I mean, you have to break that bear down, or have you had some terrible drag outs?
I don't drag bears. I mean, truly, just quarter them right on the ground. Mm-hmm. I mean, I don't drag bears even when I could. I mean, like if I could get a 4-wheeler back in there, we just skin them right there on the ground, almost every time. And I don't know, I the older I get, the more respect I have for bears. I almost do it on purpose. Just like, I don't want to put that thing in the back of my truck and skin him in my garage. We're gonna skin him right here where I killed him. There's a little bit of that, but they're not hard to mess with. That's funny. A lot of people that are starting bear hunting, they're worried about processing a bear and like, how do you skin a bear? And man, you skin anything with 4 feet and hair the exact same way. If it's a squirrel or a bear or a deer, I mean, it's pretty much the same way. But no, any bear that I would be killing, we would just be quartering it up, And I use my mules sometimes if we got them, and haul out bears on mules. But this bear, I it was a unique day because it was Thanksgiving break, and so I had my dad, my brother, and it was 2013. My son bear, I think, was just like 8 years old, and I took a bunch of people back up, and we made a big fire. It was real cold, and skinned that bear. Some of the pictures of that are really cool. It looked like we were butchering a whale, I mean, it was just like, and we hauled that thing out in backpacks, and that was a special day.
I'm going to skip to the last, or I'm not going to skip. One other thing I just want to touch on with you real quick is, how did you get introduced to mules?
How did I get introduced to mules? So I didn't grow up with equine animals. Like my dad, we didn't have horses or mules. One of my good friends, one of my best friends in school, had a big horse ranch, and they had a bunch of just saddle horses. And so grew up riding them to just a little bit of exposure to them, and really never took that much interest in them at the time. You wouldn't have thought it. They scared me actually, and as a little kid, and riding them did, and but growing up in the Ouachita's, there was just a cultural appreciation for mules. In this part of the world, other places too, but for sure this part of the world. And I remember one time there was a local artist in the town that we lived in, and she had done a painting of her father wearing overalls with his mules yoked up, and he was going to plow with them. It was a painting, and I don't know. As an 8-year-old kid, I thought that was cool. And I knew a lot of people down there that rode mules and hunted on mules and did stuff. And I don't know. It kind of came out of left field. I mean, I was an adult, and just kind of the circumstances of my life were right. I had a place to keep equine animals, and I just was like, told my wife, I was like, I'm about to buy a mule. And so I did. And that was about 10 years ago. I've only been in it about 10 years. And knew nothing about them. Truly didn't. I mean, my grandpa worked, used mules to plow and work when he was a little kid. I never even heard him talk about it. My dad actually just told me that recently. So it's not like I had some deep family connection with mules. But culturally in this area, there's a massive connection. The Ozarks, this part of the world, is kind of an epicenter for mules. Southern Missouri. There's a lot of really great mule trainers around here. A lot of the mules that are going out west come from this part of the world. It's kind of more equalized today than it probably was, but historically, mules were in the east, horses were in the west. Not to say there weren't horses here too, but I heard a good mule man say the other day, I mean, like 50 years ago, I mean, all the mules came from the east out to the west. And it has its connection back to the agricultural roots of this area. I mean, or this part of the world. Mules did better in the heat. They didn't eat as much. They lived longer. They were per pound of equine flesh. There was more strength, stamina, power in a mule. I mean, like a 800-pound mule can do the work of a 1,200-pound horse. So you got to feed an 800-pound mule less. So you have mules, and he lives 30% longer, has a working life. I'm kind of just making that statistic up, but they have a longer working life. And anyway, I just got a mule, started training them, and just kind of fell in love with them. And I like them. I never thought I would be the guy that would like go out of his way to do stuff on a mule. Originally, I brought it just as a hunting tool because James Lawrence, my buddy, my mentor, I should have brought up James more when you were asking about who influenced me. He hunted using horses, and what he would do, and this is the way I use my mules to hunt, is that he would put his saddle on and use what they call a saddle pannier, which is just basically a big bag that you put on your mule, a bag on each side, but it fits over the saddle. So. And you put all your camping gear and everything you need in the saddle panniers, which is a big, you can carry a lot. You carry 150, 180 pounds of gear if you wanted to. You lead that animal, one animal, back into the mountains where you're going to hunt solo. You unload all your gear, pull the saddle panniers off, and you got a saddle. As opposed to like having a sawbuck deal where you just had a pack animal, and so nobody taught him how to do that. He just started doing it, and that's why I got mules. It was because James Lawrence hunted in Arkansas with a horse, and he would go back and he'd stay 8 or 9 days back in the wilderness and never come out and carry all his supplies, and then he'd ride the horse. So he'd set up his camp after that and then ride the horse. And so that's the way I like to hunt. And it's if you want to kill a deer, you don't go to the mountains. You stay like right here. Mm-hmm. So when I go to the mountains hunting like that, it's just fun and it's meaningful to me. And now we use our mules bear hunting quite a bit though too, because if you do kill a bear way back in somewhere, and it's always hot in the early season, you got a time stamp. Yeah, I'll ride my mule back in. If I kill one, haul it out with the mule. But I enjoy it. So now I'm one of these guys that like, I'm an equine man now. So I go out of my way. Like, it's like I actually was like, Clay, you cannot sacrifice, a hunt for the sake, because we all know guys that like go out to Colorado and take their horses, and really they're just going out there to ride. Like elk hunting is just kind of like something else they do. Do y'all know people like that? Mm-hmm. Heard of people like that?
I've heard of people like that.
And I was like, I can never be that guy, and I'm not that guy, but a little bit. The older I get, I'm a little bit more like that because I just love my mules and I love riding them and training them and messing with them. I don't know. I just love it.
Well, see, I'm just fascinated. Again, you're using it as a hunting tool as well. I mean, that's like a big aspect. That's why you got into mules.
Yep.
And just as, I mean, ultimate four-wheel drive vehicle, getting back, but also getting stuff in and out. This is fascinating. It's always something I've wanted to do is hunt off horseback or something like that. Go out west, drop camp, I don't know, something. But be able to do that back east here and still have something that you can use. You have a connection to the training aspect, but also it's a hunting. They're a hunting tool. It's just super fascinating.
Yeah.
So, I mean, do you? I want to. One of my last things I was going to ask. I wanted to ask about close bear encounters, and I know you've had quite a few. Some of them are on video. But have you had any close and like risky situations on a mule or horseback or anything like that on a hunt or anything that you've done?
Well, two stories come to mind. One of them's just fun, and one of them actually involved somebody getting injured. But my daughter got hurt pretty bad on a mule on a bear hunt a couple years ago. Well, it was several years ago. I mean, it was kind of operator error on my fault. But we use our mules to bait bears. There's some places we're not able to. You can only bait on private land, but we've got some places that are landlocked and you can't drive to them. There's parts of the property that you can't drive to that we want to bait bears, and so we're using our mules to pack in bear bait. And so anyway, me and my at the time, River was 13, 13-year-old daughter River. We had packed in this bear bait, put it out, had saddle panniers, so I had my riding saddle on underneath this. Once we unloaded all the bait, I took the pannier off, rolled it up, and I said, River, do you want to ride Izzy down the mountain? And Izzy at the time is the mule I still have, and she was a broke, good mule, but young, and the River's 13. It was dumb. It was super dumb, like on my part. And she's like, yeah, I want to ride Izzy. And River was a pretty good rider at the time, and so I put her on Izzy, and then we proceeded to go off down the mountain. And basically, Izzy started to trot, and River kind of got caught off guard by that, bounced a little bit, and kind of cued her to run faster without knowing it. And pretty soon we had a runaway, just a straight up runaway, going down the steep mountain, and I see Izzy and River just disappear, just going as fast as a mule can run, going down the mountain, 13-year-old girl, and I hear her screaming. It was terrifying. And they just disappear. And so I just take off running, yelling, and, I run 200 yards down the mountain, and I see my mule standing there without River looking at me running down the mountain, and there's River sprawled out on the ground, feet are pointed up the mountain, head down the mountain, blood all over the ground. Maybe not all over the ground. That might be an exaggeration. But anyway, I thought she could have been dead, and basically she ducked to go under a limb and fell off and just tumbled and busted her head real bad. I got a concussion, took her to the ER. It was way better than it could have been, but that was one dangerous moment. I mean, I've had a lot of close encounters of, anybody that's riding mules much in rough country is going to have stuff that happened. But I will tell you one story, and it relates back to a guy that we did quite a bit of stuff with, a guy named Warner Glenn. We did a series of podcasts on a guy named Warner Glenn, Southeast Arizona, dry ground mountain lion hunter. At the time he was 86 years old, working cattle ranch on the border of Mexico. The southern fence on his ranch is literally the wall. And incredible man, 6'6", looks like a movie star. But been ranching his whole life. He rides mules, dry ground lion hunter. I was with Warner hunting lions. And we had a camera crew with us. This is while we were filming something for Meat Eater. And so we had like 6 mules, and the dogs go over this big mountain, and Warner turns to the whole crew, and whatever he says, you just do. You don't ask questions. He says, Kelly, you take the cameraman and y'all go around the mountain, and he describes where to go. And he says, Clay, you come with me. And I say, yes, sir. And Warner was riding his mule, and he was ponying another mule, which means he had one that was packing gear. So he had a lead rope and was pulling that mule. We proceed for like the next 15 minutes, go on the wildest mule ride I've ever been on in my life. I mean, we're jumping rocks, and the mules are scrambling and falling, and that the mule he's ponying is, it was just like chaos. I mean, just like going up this crazy mountain, and Warner never looked back, not one time looked back to see if I was with him. We get to the top of the mountain. I mean, my hair's laid back and eyes are big, and the man never said a word about it. Like he'd get to the top of the mountain and we just go to the dogs. Like he never acknowledged that it was like a wild ride. And I'd ridden quite a bit at that point, and I knew it was pretty wild. That night at dinner, I said, Mr. Warner, I said, if you were rating what we did today on a scale of 1 to 10, and a 0 was riding down a flat gravel road, and a 10 was that you were dead, what did we do today when we went up the side of that mountain? And he went, huh. And I promise you, I thought he was going to be like, oh, it was about a 3. I mean, I didn't, to him, he didn't act like it was any big deal. And thankfully he goes, that was probably about an 8. he said, if it had been much harder than that, I don't think we could have done it. I laughed because, I mean, he just didn't think anything about like maxing out these mountain mules with and never looked back. And I'll never forget him going, it's probably about an 8. and then Warner's the kind of guy you would ask that question to, and he'd have all kind of, but oh gosh, he's had mules roll on top of him and broke bones and airlifted out of places, and thankfully I've never had any major injuries, but lots of scares. Been bucked off, I think 3 times, just in different goofy situations.
But yeah, those episodes with him, I listened to those. Those were incredible. Mm-hmm. Those episodes of Bear Grease, and he did that when he was 86.
He's 86. He's I think he's 90 today.
Wow.
You could do the math.
Mm-hmm.
He may have been 87. I think he's pushing 90, and he got 6 months after we did that. He got hurt real bad in the backcountry and had to be airlifted out by a helicopter, mule wreck, punctured lung, all kind of crazy stuff. And when you're that age and that stuff happens, it's usually not a good sign. I just kind of thought, man, this is probably, and like a year later, he's like dry ground line hunting, ranching, totally fine. Well, I don't want to give his medical information away, but I think everybody knows that he got hurt real bad when a bull came through a corral and squashed him, broke his pelvis.
Gosh.
And I was like, oh boy, this is probably it. I talked to communicated with his family just the other day, and they were like, yeah, he's out line hunting right now on a mule.
That is awesome.
And I think he's 90.
That is. I hope I'm like that when I'm 90.
Oh, he's probably one of the top, I mean, if not the top 5 all time, just people. I mean, like that I've been around. I mean, in the Bear Grease world, just an incredible man, genuine, humble, unreal.
Man, I got a bunch more questions, and I could sit here for probably 4 more hours, but I'm not going to do that to you. So tell us about Bear Grease, kind of what you got going on, where people can find you, all that stuff.
Sure. Now, the Bear Grease podcast, that's what I do with most of my work world. And Bear Grease is a documentary style podcast that we just talk about a wide variety of stuff. It's historical. It's really a storytelling podcast about rural America. Usually almost always has an overlap inside of hunting, but not always the main focus. I mean, we've done a lot of podcasts on probably the biggest. We did a series on Daniel Boone that people still talk a lot about. We did a series on a guy named Holt Collier, African American guy that was a market bear hunter and guided Teddy Roosevelt. That was an incredible episode. We do a lot of law enforcement stuff. My probably favorite episode, this story that I ever got to tell, was a series we called Genuine Outlaws, and it was about 2 turkey poachers from my hometown. And they'd passed away, but I interviewed their family and their friends and kind of explore. In Bear Grease, there's always something deeper. It's really a human podcast in a way, even though we talk about wildlife and wild places. But in this outlaw episode, I was exploring how Louis Dale and Charlie would have been guys my dad would have come home from the bank and told me about. And as a kid, I didn't know if we loved them or hated them. I couldn't tell. I didn't know if they were guys that we should be afraid of or guys that we should go over to their house, And so as an adult, I sorted through that, and I contrasted this thing that so many people identified with of having these outlaws, guys that were breaking the law, but were really good people in their community, and kind of the conflict of that. Wait a minute, you're a bad guy, but wait a minute, you're, a good guy too. Anyway, just we do all kind of stuff, but Bear Grease, so it's a part of the Meat Eater Podcast Network.
Yeah, those episodes are great too, by the way. Listen to those also.
Genuine Outlaws.
Louis Dale and
Louis Dale and Charlie.
Yeah.
Hey, foreshadow, I know we got to stop here. I hunted with Stoney Edwards, Charlie's son, and it'll be a full Meat Eater YouTube video this fall.
Oh,
running deer with dogs. It was a deer hunting episode. But those guys have really, they're not outlaws anymore. They're pretty straight laced, but have a deep connection down in that part of the world. And if they saw a whitetail buck on the side of the road, this might not be exactly true, but dog hunters are like this. They saw a big 10-point standing on the side of the road that they could shoot. They wouldn't shoot it. They'd go home and get their dogs, turn it loose, and then go shoot it. They're like, a deer only means something to them if it's being run by a dog, But, so anyway, I hunted with those guys. I like them.
Oh, I can't wait to watch that.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Glad to hear some dog hunting content.
Yeah, absolutely. Houndsman, absolutely. No, Clay, absolutely appreciate you spending some time with us today. I don't know, we've been here forever doing all kinds of stuff, but again, listeners, viewers out there, check out the Bear Grease podcast. If you aren't currently listening or watching the renders on YouTube as well, we were just on a render. Probably it's come out before this episode definitely has come out. But appreciate everybody watching the podcast. Thank y'all for listening. We'll catch you back here on the next episode from the Southern Outdoorsman. And remember, guys, y'all stay Southern.